In this video, I wanted to share with you not just how I change strings, but also some under-discussed aspects of strings themselves. GHS has been really good to me throughout the decades, but this applies to any make or brand of string. If you've recently changed your strings and your guitar doesn't feel quite the same as it did before, some of this stuff is pretty subtle. The curveball is that there's more to it than string gauge itself. On any set of strings, whether for acoustic or electric guitar, you're going to have some strings that are plain, and you're going to have at least as many, if not more, that contain a wrap around a core. If we take a nickel guitar string for electric guitar and we look at the D string, you're going to find that the string itself is not plain, and the wrap is what your finger contacts. Different strings may contain a different diameter of the core itself, so even though the string gauge may read the same on the packaging, 26, 36, whatever, there's no guarantee that the core size itself is identical. And if you have a thicker core, that's going to exert more tension on the neck, and the end result is that it'll place just a little bit more of a bow in the neck, and the guitar will feel just a little bit different than it did before. Is it enough to notice? Well, if you notice it, then it is. There's your answer. String manufacturers generally tend to not publish just what those specific core sizes are, although a lot of times you'll get a general idea. For example, GHS has the standard GHS boomers, but they also manufacture a set with a thin core, and they manufacture another set with a thick core. What they say about the thick core is that it's for players who want more sustain out of the string. Conversely, the thin core will make the string feel slinkier. The Dario doesn't publish the core diameter either, but on the side of the packaging, they'll give you the tension in pounds and kilograms. So if you're comparing two sets of Darios and you see that the string gauge itself is identical, but the tension specifications are different, that's a good indicator. Of course, if you really want to get to the bottom of it, you could just take a set of calipers and measure the core that in most cases sticks out at the end of the string. Although in the case of this DR string that I showed you just a moment ago, the end doesn't stick out. If I talk about something on this channel, literally, not only do I use it, but I've probably been using it for 15 or 20 years. Pretty much on electric guitars, I split my time between GHS boomers, and on other Strats, other electric guitars, I really like the nickel rockers. The nickel rockers are the Eric Johnson string. I love the nickel rockers. They're both round-wound nickel guitar strings. The packaging makes it very clear. It specifically says that they have a smaller core. Here, I'll read it to you. Burnished nickel rockers are slightly polished, pure nickel round-wound strings for that warm, bright tone of the 50s and 60s. No kidding, I like these strings. Burnished nickel rocker strings have smaller cores and are touched only lightly by the burnisher for a smoother feeling string that is still round-wound! Exclamation point. Because who isn't excited by guitar strings? I sure am. As a result, they are brighter and more flexible than regular nickel rockers. There's a handwritten note from Dave Cowles on the SRV archives, and he says that the string set was designed with Rene Martinez, of course Stevie's guitar tech, and Stevie himself, and that the set was called CU-SRV. He says that the gauges of that set were 11, 15, 19, 28, 38, 58, and they were nickel rocker strings. Although in the note, he says that from time to time, Stevie liked to use a 12 or even a 13 on top. I have some recollection of reading about by the last tour in particular that Stevie had dropped his gauges down, simply due to strain on his hands. But straight from the horse's mouth at GHS, who knew Stevie and knew Rene, Stevie simply didn't always use the gauges that are often associated with him. On the other hand, you have Jimi Hendrix using a notoriously light set of strings, and Roger Mayer speaking to Guitar World. Roger talks about the string jump from the second to the third string being the correct jump that he used with Jimi, and he says that the electrical output with an electric guitar is the square of the string diameter. So he says that you get a much more balanced sound going in Jimi's case from a 13 on the second string to a 15 on the third string. It's the 13 to 15 jump. Roger says that up top on the high E, Jimi was using a 10 to the second string with a 13, the third with a 15, and then 26 on the wound D string, 32 on the wound 5th string, and the low E being a relatively light 38. By far, experimenting with string gauges and string type is the most economical way I can think of, aside from picks and individual touch on the guitar, to effect a change in your sound. Even experimenting with cables is going to run you back a little bit more money than messing around with a few different sets of strings. And know that as you experiment, the feel of your guitar is going to change, So once you find something that you like, at that point, then you want to have your guitar adjusted, and if you're capable of doing that yourself, great. But I've always deferred to the professionals and paid people who are really good at it to take care of my guitars. So when it comes to changing those strings, this is how I do it. Previously, before starting a YouTube channel and learning video when I had a bunch more time, I used to also solder the ball ends to the string, which I did find useful, or at least I thought so, particularly when it came to staying in tune when using the tremolo bar. But for right now, we'll keep it much simpler than that, and you'll see how I install a plain string. In the 1994 Guitar Player magazine column, Dan Erlewine refers to this as the locking tie. I go only one string at a time when I de-string. I don't like taking all the tension off of the neck. The string goes through the slot, you take the free end, and you wrap it around towards the headstock center, underneath the string, and up against the post, thus locking the string in place, and then you wind the string down. The string is held tightly against the post. Doing this wraps the string against itself. On wound strings, this is the over and under tie. You make the first wrap over the string as it comes through the post, and then all other wraps under. You may elect not to do this on the low E string, because sometimes with heavier gauge strings, it works better to just wrap down. I grew up reading Guitar Player magazine, and a number of years ago I digitized everything from the old days that I still had in physical print. It was from March of 1994, Dan Erlewine. I heard from my friend Eric Miller that he had gotten Dan the gig writing for Guitar Player magazine, but Eric's the one who taught it to me, and it was echoed in May of 1994 in Guitar Player. I'll see you again before long, and thanks for watching.